as we're going back and forth with what Trump will do in 45 days, the Europeans are actually stepping up, and they're stepping up in a meaningful and significant way. You're seeing evidence after evidence after evidence of that, and I'm going to lay that out. We're going to start somewhere else, though. We're going to start in this place with, well, okay, so yesterday I talked about Azerbaijans Warning and never accept occupation and what was happening there. And here we see Peskov talking about Azerbaijan. First, what he's talking about with Ukraine, nothing has changed. ISW says he talks about how Russia's peace pitch is just the same warplane. Ukraine must disarm, drop NATO, replace its leaders. There's really nothing to see there with Ukraine. But what he's talking about with Azerbaijan, it's just amazing that the Russians are about to lose one of a country that they never should be losing. It should have just been cozy with Russia all the way through, but they just keep being abusive to them. Peskov talks about how relations between Moscow and Baku have entered a difficult period, and the Kremlin hopes it will pass. It's very important for us that Russians are respected in Azerbaijan. Well, that's interesting because you're not respecting Azerbaijanis who are in Russia, but you think it should flow the other direction. Peskov also commented on Baku's plans to file a lawsuit against Russia. Investigations, he says, are ongoing and proceedings are underway. If Azerbaijan chooses to take such a step, that's within its rights. We will await official outcomes of all ongoing investigations and proceedings. So part of this is what's unnerving to the Azerbaijanis is that the Russians are all talk about how things are processing when nothing's actually taking place, nothing's actually happening. And so that's part of the frustration. Peskov also said it's very important to us that Russians are respected. As I just said, Moscow and Baku have a solid foundation in their relationship. Well, in the sense that they were just overrun by the Russians in the form of the Soviet Union and folded into their country, and that's not what they ever wanted. But, so when Russians get treated abroad the same way they treat powerless migrants at home, they suddenly start demanding respect. That's the key. The Russians only seem to understand it flowing one way. Okay. I also saw this. This was just posted recently. The main reason given for Russia's invasion of the Donbass in 2014 was the non-existent oppression of Russian-speaking minority. Now they banned the use of Ukrainian in all occupied territories. That's the irony. And it's the same kind of thing as what's happening in Azerbaijan. They treat people poorly, and then they wonder why there's some kind of reaction to it. Okay, let's go and look at this as well. Azerbaijan is arresting Wagner fighters, or Wagner. I know people correct me. Why don't you say Wagner? I don't really care to give any respect here. Wagner fighters as war criminals breaking post-Soviet precedent. That's really interesting. Fighters served time in Russian penal colonies before Prigozhin's Project K recruited them for Ukraine. Now they face mercenary charges in their homeland. Well, okay. And again, that's breaking with huge precedent, and that's not something that the Russians were expecting from the Azerbaijanis. Meanwhile, in Europe, most of Europe is doing a really good job, like really starting to stand up and protect Ukraine. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But here's one part of Europe that's really kind of going the other direction. Hungary. Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó announced that Hungary, Serbia, and Russia are making an agreement to build a new oil pipeline. Remember the 18th sanctions package that was just passed? The 18th sanctions package just said, no Nord Stream, we're not doing that. It's over, it's done. Well, they're coming up with a new plan, an 18th package for a new oil pipeline, and they blame Brussels for a series of wrong decisions that crippled Europe's energy market and led to soaring prices. Well, it's not Brussels that did it. It was Russia that caused this. Now, they could work out something through Azerbaijan and Georgia and Turkey and that sort of thing, but they don't want to do that. They want the cheap Russian oil, and they want to be cozy with Russia. Okay, meanwhile, we're talking about sanctions. In the U.S., I'm not sure exactly how the sanctions are going to play out. I talked about this earlier with Greg Terry, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Lindsey Graham was talking tough about this, but here's what I would tell China, India, and Brazil. If you keep buying cheap Russian oil to allow this war to continue, we're going to tear up and crush your economy. You're buying cheap Russian oil. I'd get to the table soon. I don't know that tough talk is going to get them anywhere. Here is the Secretary of the Treasury saying we don't know what the deadline will be, whether it's 10, 30, or 50 days. Well, they only have 45 days left. Any country that buys sanctioned Russian oil is going to be subject to 100% secondary tariff. And they're banking on that they would rather do business with the United States than do business with Russia because we're such a much larger proportion of their trade. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, guys. I really just don't know. But I do know that Beijing is not excited about being threatened. Beijing responded following the sanctions for cooperation with Russia. The European Union has, for the first time, included Chinese banks and companies in new sanctions package against Russia. So they're not liking that at all. And so, I mean, if you're China, you're reacting to that as you would expect that they would react to that. Now, Greg Terry and I just talked about this in this video here about the hidden sanctions risk that could blow up big time. And if it works, that's great. If it doesn't work, it's going to be problematic. But now we also have other things coming along down the lines. For example, we have a new round of direct talks between Kyiv and Moscow, which might take place on Wednesday or Thursday this week. Moscow said the date has not been finalized, according to the Kyiv Post. And then later on, they said it's set for June 23rd. And the topics on the table are return of all POWs and the repatriation of children abducted to Russia. How we're having any peace talks without returning your children first before doing that, I just don't understand. Kidnapping will get you a 20 years or a life sentence just for kidnapping one child. They stole tens of thousands of children. Okay, and an in-person meeting with Putin. We'll see how that plays out. Now, here's the big feature story. Europe is stepping up in a big way, in a meaningful way. And you can see this in a number of places across Europe. You can see it in France. You can see it in Germany, the Netherlands, on and on. And I'll show you what's going on here. Ukraine and France have signed new documents on cooperation in key defense sectors. Drone production, sure. Air defense, missile systems. This is the big key right now. And localizing manufacturing in Ukraine. The foreign minister said the deals are a major step toward strategic partnership agreement. And then we see it in Germany. Germany's leading the way here. They really are in a significant, meaningful way. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius at Ramstein said Putin is pushing his war agenda with grim determination, has no real interest in negotiations. He talks peace in the morning and launches drones and missiles by the evening. This is a cynical game to buy time. He's wrong if he thinks Russia's war machine will win in the long run. So you have to do something about it, and they are backing it. This just came out a couple hours ago. Berlin said 5 Patriot systems and likely more missiles would soon be coming to Ukraine following a deal with the U.S. So we already talked about the 3. That was one thing. Let me go back to this article. We already talked about 3 some time ago, but here we're looking at 5 now. Germany said it would soon send 5 Patriot air defense systems. That's not pieces of it. That's 5 systems to Ukraine in coordination with the U.S. It was unclear if the systems would be provided from Germany's own stockpile or just where it was coming from. Germany originally had 12 Patriot batteries total, 3 of which have already been sent to Ukraine. 2 others have been leased to Poland, and 1 more is undergoing maintenance. As such, it's likely that Berlin would be sending its own Patriots in return for the same system or its equivalent from other nations to free up the much desired air defense system. So they're trying to get it out. They're trying to expedite it and get it out as quickly as possible. Now, Norway is going in with Germany. Norway is ready to significantly boost funding for Ukraine air defense. The move is being coordinated with Germany as both countries already closely cooperate in producing air defense systems and ammunition for Ukraine. Norway and Germany are discussing the delivery of these Patriot systems. Again, air defense is the key. They're working out air defense as strongly as they can right now. So between the significant Patriot and other missiles, anti-air ballistic missiles, like air defense kind of missiles, and Ukraine's own homegrown Shahed defense, these little things that can shoot up and take care of the Shaheds. This is a big step forward. I mean, it's a big step forward. Okay, the Netherlands too. The Netherlands will make a substantial contribution to the U.S.-led initiative to strengthen Ukraine's air defenses. That's the headline. That's the big story today. Now, Zelensky's talking about how Ukrainians must seek our own missiles in action, but it's going to take time. The goal is to raise the share of domestically produced weapons in our defense forces to 50% within 6 months. It's realistic. If I didn't know what Ukraine has already done, I would say that's crazy. It's not realistic. You're not going to actually get anything done by doing that. But this is Ukraine we're talking about, and they've done some phenomenal things, going from tens of thousands of drones to hundreds of thousands of drones to millions plural of drones within just a year. And they can do it. Every weapons production site in Russia must be within reach. We already have hundreds of deals with partners on supplies, joint production, and investments. All agreements must be reviewed and executed. So they're working at it, and they're going to go after Russia's logistical chain significantly when they have that. Okay. Estonia, let's look at what they're doing. The situation with a bridge that connected them with Russia. Ironically, it was called the Friendship Bridge. What should we call it now? They're tearing this thing up. This Friendship Bridge, they're drilling it. They're putting dragon's teeth on it. This is a bridge between here in Narva, between Estonia and Russia, and they're not taking any chances because they know what Russia is. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson has exactly the wrong answer. Here's his formula for things, and let's look at this.
I'm not even sure what they wanted. They wanted the West to back off. But in some basic way, they won. And we have to acknowledge that. And it's really hard for I'm not in favor of Russia winning anything. I'm American. I want to win. But that you can't lie to yourself. They won.
He seems awfully gleeful about that. It's kind of weird to watch.
And so on the basis of...
In which way did they win?
They took land and they don't have to give it back.
That's called stealing. Like, you can call that winning, but like, define that anywhere else. It's not just land. It's you took that and you don't have to give it back. You stole. I mean, so it's upending international order. And he doesn't seem to quite grasp that.
And short of bombing them with nuclear weapons, we can't make them give it back. That's called victory. And the victor gets to set, not all the terms, but as Germany found out, a lot of the terms. So,
but victory on that immoral basis, is that really victory, or is that something else? Because I just think that's problematic moving forward. Okay, let's look at this. A couple things about Russia. Russia wants to fine people for using crypto as a payment. I was just talking about crypto in the United States and what is happening with President Trump just signing a crypto bill. Starting in 2026, Russians may face penalties for making payments in cryptocurrency. A draft law is already in the works. Crypto is currently a gray zone, and fines will help bring order. I think what's going to happen there is something a little bit different than what they're anticipating. It'll be used by criminals and criminals only, and law-abiding people who are trying to use it for legitimate purposes won't be able to, but that's not being seen at all. And then there's this other story here. Russia nearly doubles gold and silver exports to China. This is important. Nearly doubled gold and silver exports. They're bleeding money out. Russia exports of precious metal ores and concentrates to China surged by 80% in 6 months, reaching $1 billion, Bloomberg reports, citing Chinese customs data. Yeah, I mean, war is expensive. And then here we see today's Russian papers. We see from the BBC, today's Russian papers on the economy. More and more enterprises plan to cut output. Russia is shutting off from technological advances. It's naive to think that everything we can make ourselves, everything we need, we can make ourselves or get from China. But that's where Russia is. They're really not great at engineering and building things. They can assemble, but that's what they've been up to. Okay, it's almost 5 o'clock right now in the United States as I'm talking about this, and Jake Bro is on his $5 million campaign. This morning at about 9 o'clock or before 9 o'clock, they were up to $437,000. And if we refresh this campaign, we see that they're up at $475,628. This is day 3, I think, of their campaign. And all the other campaigns took about a week. If you're interested in the Save the Donkeys campaign of sending trucks through NAFO with Jake Bro, I will leave the link below, and I'll say thank you very much, because anywhere that you can serve or provide for needs in Ukraine, give to legitimate organizations, NAFO or Samaritan's Purse or United 24 or what have you. And thank you in advance if you're willing to do that. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.